Welcome to day 2 of the Women and Girls Leadership and Empowerment Conference. We have another exciting day for you of dynamic speakers, panelist sessions, breakout and professional networking sessions. And this morning, first off, we have our opening speaker who will be introduced to you by Dr. Chelsea Washington.
Hello, everyone. I have the privilege of introducing Dr. Cheryl Davenport Dozier. She is an accomplished educator whose experience in higher education spans more than 30 years. She is President Emerita of Savannah State University from Savannah, Georgia, a historically Black college and university founded in 1890, where she served for 8 years as president. She had a 17-year career at the University of Georgia as professor of social work and served in several administrative roles, including chief diversity officer, assistant vice president of academic affairs. She's also served as faculty and director for the Ghana Interdisciplinary Study Abroad program and as an affiliate faculty in the African Studies Institute at the Institute of African American Studies. Dr. Dozier was instrumental in enhancing the global mission at UGA and Savannah State as she traveled the 10 countries in Africa, Asia, South and Central America on educational excursions with faculty and students over 20 years. As a community, civic, and church leader for over 40 years, Dr. Dozier has been engaged in initiatives as an advocate for vulnerable populations and women and girls. She served as the co-founder and convener of the Females Rites of Passage program for girls between the ages of 13 and 17 years old for over 2 years at her church, New Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church. Currently, she is a professor of social work at Andrew Young School of Policy Studies at Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia, and CEO of CDD Consultants. Dr. Dozier earned a bachelor's degree in education from Farley Dickinson University, a master's of social work degree from Atlanta University, now Clark Atlanta University, and a doctor of social work from Hunter College at the Graduate Center at the University of New York. She is a proud, loving mother, grandmother, wife, aunt, sister, niece, and my colleague, and dear, dear friend who loves her family. We welcome you, Dr. Dozier.
Whose drumbeat do you march to? Whose drumbeat do you march to? The old women gather in my head, sharing wisdom of past lives. They laugh at my mistakes, for many have done the same. They soothe my temple with remedies. There is one who helps me to remain strong. There is another one who helps me to achieve. The eldest of them all, my auntie who's 101, makes me aware of who I am and what I must be. The old women in my head gather to watch me step into the lives they once lived. Whose drumbeat? Whose drumbeat? Whose drumbeat do you march to? Good morning. It is indeed an honor to be a part of this session of the Women and Girls Leadership Conference. Women and Girls Leadership and Empowerment Conference. We are so glad that you've joined us. So here in the US, it's quite early. It's 7-ish a.m., 7:30 a.m. And for some of you who are all around the world, that's so exciting to know all of the places. And for those who are in Senegal, I was looking forward to being there with you. I have landed there many times, but have not spent time. Today, I'm going to just talk about what helps us to become courageous women who have an impressive impact. Today, I'm going to talk to you about leading with intentional. In order to have an impressive impact, you must have intentional and intrusive interactions with integrity and innovation. You all are leaders, no matter what your role is. the fact that you signed on to this conference. You are a leader. And when we talk about women being intentional, being intrusive, sometimes we step back and we think that's not what we are supposed to be. So let me share a little bit about what I know about being intentional and being intrusive, because women are leading the world and have for a long time. It's just who's telling the story. As we know, if the lion told the story of who's the king of the jungle, everybody would know it's the lion and not man, right? So let's tell that story. I grew up in New York, and I grew up in the housing projects in Brooklyn and Queens. And in 4th grade, my teacher, and let me say this, I never had but one Black woman as a teacher in elementary, junior high school, and high school. Just Miss Threadgill, who was my chorus teacher in high school. So in 4th grade, Miss Nelson, I never forget her, asked everybody, I want you to tell me what you plan to do when you grow up. What's going to be your goal? What are you going to do? And I was so excited when she got to me. I said, I'm going to be a teacher just like you. And she looked at me and said, oh no, sweetie, you can't be a teacher. And I said, of course I could be a teacher. I have aunties who are teachers. Oh no, because you would have to go to college and you won't be going to college. And I went home so upset and just deflated. And this person crushed the dream that I've been hearing about. And again, I'm just in 4th grade, right? So my mother says, I need to come see your teacher. And as a 4th grader, 9-year-old or so, I said, no, I didn't want her to embarrass me. But she came early that morning. And I remember how intentional and intrusive, I didn't know the words, but she said, my daughter will be a teacher because she will go to college. And she began to name all of her sisters and all of her brothers and all of the colleges they went to. And one of her brothers has a PhD from Cornell. And one of her sisters has a master's degree from NYU. And she began to name them. And she says, do not ever take away her dream, her ambition. Never forgot that. My mother was being intentional about the education that her children would receive. It happened again in 7th grade. And my mother, once again, went up to the school. I came home with my schedule for junior high school. And it said that I was going to be in classes. And a lot of my friends won these classes. So I was excited. The classes were typing and home economics and business math and business English and all of these classes. And my mother once again embarrassed me and went up to the school, met with the counselor and says, I will teach her to cook, clean, iron, and sew at home. She's coming here to get French and algebra and all of the other subjects she started naming. And once again, I was embarrassed. I was going to be in the class with other Black students, and now I'm just 1 or 2 Black students in the class with all white students. I did not know that we were being, that there was a separate track. And at that time, there were 3 tracks. You can get a commercial degree, a business degree, and a college degree in high school. My mother was intentional that I would be college tracked. Unfortunately, my mother died when I was in 10th grade. She died of leukemia at a very young age, at 48. And I began to realize I'd lost that person who was going to advocate for me. And I realized that I had to do that myself. And while my dad was there and chose to continue to raise us, he wasn't going to run up to the school and do the things my mother did, but she instilled that in me. She instilled it in me to be that voice for myself, to advocate and never let anyone tell me what I can't do. And if anybody knows me who's on here, they know that's who I am. So my journey from public housing projects in New York City was not supposed to prepare me to be a president of Savannah State University, one of the 26 institutions in the Georgia state system, one of the oldest public historically Black college. It has that designation because up until 1965, there were not going to be schools in this state that Black students could attend. So I'm proud to have reached those heights, but I couldn't have done it if there weren't those people, those women you heard me talk about at the beginning, who poured themselves into me. And then those other women, my aunties and church women and teachers and social workers, they all did that. And they didn't all look like me. They begin to see the potential that I wasn't going to let anybody, as that song goes, don't let anybody turn you around. See, we have been destined to be women to lead. And what do we need to make sure we do that? We need self-confidence. I need you to be able to say, wherever you are right now, I can reach the highest heights. I can reach that goal. And there will be some mountains I have to climb, but I can do it. Now, my faith helps me to know I can do it. So those believers know that we pray. I got up this morning listening to Order My Steps, Lord, so that I can just know that I'm doing the will and what you would have me to do. Self-confidence and determination, not cockiness. So I had the opportunity to travel to West Africa in the late 90s, mid 90s, 93, to Togo and Benin and Ivory Coast. And then that was in 87. Togo, Benin, and Ivory Coast was in 1987. And Ghana and Benin in 1994. And then I just continued to travel and visit countries and develop relationships and get passionate about the work while I watched the women in the motherland doing what no one told us that they were doing and leading, but also struggling. But one thing I learned in my first trip to Ghana was that I have a day name. And that day name is, I'm born on Thursday. So if there's anyone on the call who's from Ghana, they know what my day name is. My day name is Yah. And my day name is named after Queen Yah Asantewaa. And if you don't know who Queen Mother Yah Asantewaa is, you have to look her up. Once you put in Yaasante, Asantewaa, W-A-A. Queen Asantewaa, the Queen Mother of the Ashanti people, you'll realize that this woman, she did what the men could not do. She was a fearless warrior. And in March 1900, she led thousands of soldiers, they conquered the golden stool. You see, the Ashanti stool, if you have a golden one, and these were gold, they were filled with gold because Ghana was the gold country. So the golden stool, no one should have, but the British wanted that. They saw all of the gold. Why would people come to Ghana and West Africa if it wasn't for the wealth that was there, the gold, the salt, the minerals, etc. But one of the things that she did when the men got tired and the British was just winning the war, she said, if you men of Ashanti will not go forward, then we will. We, the women, will. I shall call upon my fellow women. We fight, and we will fight till the last of us falls in the battlefields. Lots of good history about Queen Yah Asantewaa. She was a role model. And there was 4 generations of her direct descendants that you get to see as you look forward. So that's why it means so much to me to know the history. My first cabinet meeting at Savannah State, I took the Sankofa bird into the meeting. Why, you might say? Some of you are seeing Sankofa bird for the first time. But I needed them to know that I'm arriving at Savannah State. And while I was interim that first year, and I may not know all of the history, I may not know all of what's going on, but it's important for me to do what this bird, fictitious bird, and what it represents. Go back and fetch it. Go back and get what was left behind. Go back. This fictitious bird looks backwards, but it has an egg in its mouth. But it means go back to whence you come. I've traveled to the motherland looking for where I come from. I know that my strength and courage comes from the motherland. Go back and learn the beginning. I needed to know those who started the university. When I say I have not enough money to run it, how did they run the university with no resources? And you go back so that you can function in the present. And then, as this conference says, we pass it on to the girls. We have to prepare as women the place today so that the girls are going to follow in our steps. Go back and fetch it. I love the Sankofa bird. You're gonna always see Sankofa around me. So what else did I learn? The poem that you heard me share about the elder women, that was from Dr. Eva Tego Dargo. She's a faculty member in Social Science, College of Arts and Sciences at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. And she did a research study, 300 respondents on adolescent mothers with 2 or 3 generations of women in the family, looking at the adolescent mother, her mother, the grandmother, and the great-grandmother. She went back. And so you can Google and get her history, and looked at when adolescents got married, and has done a lot of work. And then she also wanted to help the women in that Kamasi region to find other ways. She set up soybean farms, had foundations to help her. A phenomenal woman, Dr. Eva Tego Dargo. So when we cross these boundaries, how do we interact with each other? Older women, younger women, the millennials are midpoint, and now we have the next generation. What are our feelings in regard to our younger women for those of us who are older? And what are the feelings that the older women have for the younger, and vice versa? Because we need to come together and realize that it's not going to be the same way for us. Another researcher that I want to name for you today is Dr. Nana APT, a Ghanaian educator and researcher, recently transitioned, but she created so many opportunities. She was the voice, the renowned advocate for girls' education, a gifted visionary, an independent thinker, a respected writer, and impassioned leader. Her research extends well beyond Ashesi University, and she retired from the University of Ghana. She had lots of research money. She developed her own foundation and the College for AMA, AMA, which she founded over 10 years ago, continues to prepare adolescent girls for college through annual summer training camps. I love sitting at the feet. I took social work students there when she was at the University of Ghana and at Ashesi, and they got to interact and really learn a lot. So I throw out names of these educators so that you would understand that I can't do this if I don't go back, and I've gone back to bring it forward. So being intentional and intrusive, you have to have something that you are moving forward. What are you presenting? So challenging times we're facing, turbulent times in some parts of the world with COVID and other issues of social injustices, racism and sexism and heterosexism, all impacting us as women and girls. Again, remember, you must have an impressive impact as a leader. Therefore, we must continue to always be intentional and intrusive, but we must do that with integrity. Integrity is important as we move forward. We know that as we move forward, we get to 2 forks in the road. One says challenges ahead, and the other one says change ahead. Challenges ahead, change ahead. Do you think, which one would you take? Which one are you ready? The road is blocked. You must go one way or the other. Either way, you're going to need to be intentional and intrusive about your decision. And then what do you do when you get there? Are you ready for the change? Are you ready for the challenges? We must be prepared to face, and I want to stop and commend all of you who are essential workers, commend all of you who've had to continue to run universities and run agencies and social service agencies and others and public agencies. I want to commend you because you could not just stop because of the virus. You had to recognize that challenge was there and you needed to move forward. That's what we do. One of the other ways that we're able to work with, and as you heard me say that the 2 of the professors have worked with young girls, and several of them introduced me to the rites of passage programs, the puberty rites. There's some aspects of the puberty rights that, of course, we do not support, female circumcision, and they did not either. So we have to, and there's more education going on in countries where that takes place. But there's the plus side of what the puberty rights do. And Dr. Eva Tego Dargo, as well as several other professors have studied. And we adopted, my colleagues and I created a rites of passage program that was community-based as well as church-based, so that we could bring, my daughters came through them with most of their friends, and we really poured into them. We became those other mothers, those other aunties, And we help them to feel good about who they were, no matter what your skin tone is. Because sometimes people think that somebody's too dark or too light. I've never been comfortable in the skin I'm in, and I had to work on that because I came out during a time that James Brown's song, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, and people would look at me and say, you're not Black, and didn't know how much that hurts. Words harm and hurt, even when we do them to each other and think it's jokingly, because I don't like the reason that I look this way, but I have to recognize that my grandmother didn't like what happened to her mother to get her that way. We have to understand, that is understand. And when somebody confronts me on it, I'm very clear that I can talk about it in a way that they're not expecting. But rites of passages are one models that I want you to be able to recognize. When we talk about integrity, I had the opportunity to travel to Ghana. I am a part of the University Consortium of Liberia. And that is a very important program. And I work with the Honorable Cynthia L. Blanford, the Honorary Consul for the Republic of Liberia here in Atlanta. And we do a lot of work to provide scholarships and opportunities for students from Liberia. But I had the opportunity to travel with her and faculty from Savannah State University. And one of the things that we realized is that after the war, there was not a profession that dealt with the counseling and the needs and the trauma that families were facing. So that social work did not exist as a profession. And our School of Social Work, along with some other schools of social work around the country, helped to create social work. And it is now a major. We have some students who graduated they would graduate from the bachelor's program in sociology. The sociology department said they would take it upon them to create a social work. One of their graduates, Randolph Lee, graduated, came to Savannah State. He was the head of their student council. He, as well as their University of Liberia's queen, she came to Savannah State. They got their master's degrees and they continued to go back and forth. And now that student one is working on a PhD. Each one, reach one, teach one. African tradition, each one, reach one, teach one. That's what we must do. But while I was there, we were able to have a meeting with Madam President. At that time, Madam President was Dr. Sirleaf, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, 24th President of Liberia. And I could tell you all the wonderful things of being able to sit at her feet and sit in her office. But let me just share this quote. And if you watch how she had to lead a country that after the Civil War, you're rebuilding, and then Ebola hits. I had students there when Ebola. They were the last group to get on the plane. And another HBCU students, they had to send a plane to get them. But she said, being that first president, that we must operate with integrity. These are her words. Women work harder and women are more honest. They have less reasons to be corrupt. I work hard, I work late. I have nothing on my conscience when I go to bed. I sleep. My mother was the strength. She was the anchor. She was a preacher and a teacher. How many of you can say that? That you had women in your family that was the anchor for you, and that you can rest because you know that in the course of that day, if you tick somebody off, it's because you told truth to power and they weren't ready to hear the truth. And that happens sometimes because we still have to do it with integrity. And then let's hear from our former first lady, Sister Michelle Obama. She said, if I made a commitment, I stood by that commitment and tried to make it real. Because when you become leaders, the most important thing you have is your word, your trust. That's where respect comes from. My daddy used to say, don't dishonor the family name, because all you have, and that's why I kept my name. I told my husband it has nothing personal with him. We've been married 40 years, but I am still Cheryl Davenport Dozier. So I kept that because that's my name. That's who I am. That's from whence I come. And as you've heard these two phenomenal women speak about how important it is for us to have integrity. We have to respect and love ourselves before we can respect and love others. But the work is hard and it does get hours are long and you do get weary. So I have to throw out to you that I need you to rest and restore. A good friend of mine and colleague in the DEI work, diversity, equity, and inclusion, Dr. Annalise Singh, she has said that Restore means that you understand that being an anti-racist, a social justice, whatever that work is you're doing requires sustainability. So you find ways to rest when you need it. You find ways to restore your energy and nourish yourself in reflection before diving back into the work again. I don't practice that well. Dr. Washington knows me and she knows that I don't do that well. I'm still working on it, but I say to you, rest and restore so you will get back in. Because as Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune said, when you invest in a human soul, who knows, it might be a diamond in the rough. Those people who poured in me in housing projects where many of my friends never got out, generations and generations of single parents, that people poured in me before and after my mother passed. They saw something that maybe I didn't always see. I wasn't perfect. There were times that the road got rough and the going got tough and the hills were hard to climb. So I've gone through that, and I know some of you have, but we don't turn back. So we have to think about how do we make sure we establish these mentor relationships between female leaders, female faculty, female administrators, and the girls, the young females, the ones going through school, coming out of school. We lack access often to those other mentors, but we can clarify and provide more of that ourselves. Many times we've had a mentor and a coach and we didn't even know it. Now they have words and they call them things, but we've had those words. So as I begin to wrap up so we can have some questions and answers, I want you to know women-to-women mentoring can bring together women of all ranks by supporting professional women working with female students, working with female persons who are just going through. And it's essential for us to have someone that we can trust. And we need to not get caught up in that he said, she said about her, because Audre Lorde, if you don't know who Audre Lorde is, look it up, A-U-D-R-E, Lorde, L-O-R-D-E, from the movement back in the day that I remember. She said, it is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. Yes, we have differences. Let's celebrate those differences. Yes, you're from a different country, a different region, you do it a different way. Celebrate that and let's come together. The failure, she says specifically, of academic feminists to recognize difference as a crucial strength is a failure to reach beyond the first patriarchal lesson. In our own world, divide and conquer must become define and empower, not divide and conquer. That's what those other folks do. We're talking about defining our purpose and our goal and empower each other to be on the same page, that we move together. So when I think about another one of my sheroes, Coretta Scott King, and she says, woman, if the soul of the nation is to be saved, I believe you must become its soul. So today I say to you, you are the soul of the nation. As I traveled through northern Ghana and through Sugar Shade Village, where I've been blessed to have a daughter who Beta since she was 7 years old, who just finished college and has gone through schools and opportunities because we've invested in another person who is part now of our family. But these women who make shea butter that we love, we don't know how long it takes them that they're out there. And this village did not have running water, but they had to go to the river and the pond or to the wherever to bring this water back. We have to know from whence we come. From whence we come. So I'm going to pause. Whose drumbeat do you march to? Thank you. Questions?
Dr. Dozier, that was amazing. We have several questions. The first, there are 12 of us young women watching you together here in South Africa. We love you. How do we approach a woman like you and ask her to be a mentor for us? That's the first question.
Okay.
We young girls and women in Africa need to have close ties with more women like you to mentor us and show us how to move forward like you. How do we ask for this?
Great question. Thank you, Dr. Washington. Great question. So because I'm intentional and intrusive, I give you permission to just kind of step forward because that's what I had to do. I would just step forward. I went to a conference, and this is when I knew I was going to join the academy and become a professor. Angela Davis was speaking at a conference. It was the 90s. I was working on my doctorate. I had 2 babies at home. I was raising older children as well. So my house was always filled. And I said, how can I get prepared to teach in the academy and become a professor? And I went to this conference with these named professors. I didn't know, they wouldn't know who I am, but I went up to them. Until this day, I still have the poster from that conference, and it was 1994. Because I be bold, be courageous. Now you have text and all of that. I didn't have that then. I didn't have a way to just continue to communicate. But over the years, when I ran into them, I was like, oh my goodness. You know, I came to that conference and she was like, you did? Yes. And I walked up to you and I said this. And then she would say, I remember that question. Be bold with integrity. Say, I need someone. I need someone to help me just kind of move in the right direction. Someone I can bounce off when trauma happens, and trauma happens in our mind, when people disrespect us and people don't accept that we have a solution to the problem. And I didn't spend enough time on, so these young 12 young ladies, I need you to use your innovation and creativity. That's my last I word I'm giving you, innovative. Bring another solution to the table. You think out of the box. Y'all have mass communication skills and technology skills that most of us don't. I depend on associates and others like Dr. Washington and others. Y'all got to help me, because I hit the wrong button and then it goes away. They told me don't touch anything. Okay, you go forward. And now you can text, or you can email, you can find them on Facebook. So I can't tell you how many people I mentor or coach, but I get joy out of it too. So just ask, but be clear, because many people are busy and don't have a lot of time. And let me say this, there are people who have mentored me and they did not know it, because you can watch somebody's growth. You can follow them now online and Facebook, LinkedIn, and I follow careers. When I knew I wanted to be a president, I started looking at who just became a president at schools I was interested. Then I would look up their bio, look at what they did. Okay, I need to publish something. Okay, I need to do this. Okay, I need to go to that meeting. So you can be mentored by someone who doesn't even know it, because you have access to a lot of what they're doing.
Awesome, that's amazing. The next question, can you explain more about what you mean by we must be intrusive?
We must be very clear when somebody, let me say a couple of things we need to do, being intrusive. Sometimes we have to call people out with integrity. We have to remind them that yes, I'm at the table. You're talking around me and about, I'm at the table, I'm right here, and I can do that. And I said to you, I can do that. So I'm intrusive. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to move in. I'm going to say to them also that what you just said, I do a lot of work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have to call people out. One of the things I call people out and call men out on, because they would refer to women as girls. And they would say, see, it's okay for us at this conference, but it's not okay to say, go see the girl in the office, and the girl you're referring to is a woman who's married, got grandchildren, or whatever. And she would say, I could be their mother or their grandmother, and they still refer to me as a girl. So I would say, so should we call you the boys? We just say, go see the boy. And they say, I never thought of it like that. So I would come back, I would say that. In my doctoral program, I was at Hunter University, phenomenal school of social work. But at the first year of the PhD program, all the professors were white, male, and Jewish. So at the end of December, the end of the first fall semester, they said, any questions you want to tell us and all of this? And I'm the only Black woman in the program, one African Caribbean male that's in the program. And I said, when will we have a faculty member that's not white, male, and Jewish? They looked at me. I said, I'm just wondering, because that's not what we're going to see. And then they said, oh, Dr. So-and-so will teach next semester. And I said, she's white, female, and Jewish. And they looked at me. I said, we need diversity. And that was 1994. It was my first semester, my first year. They could have put me out the program, but I was being intentional and intrusive. It's about my education. And then I said, when I look at what we're reading books written by your colleagues, and the articles you're giving us to read is almost all by white males. I need more diversity. I need for this program to provide more. It does a phenomenal job of that right now. And while I was there, an African-American became the dean, and he had his degree from Howard University. So you know he brought with him diversity. So we do have to sometimes call him out with integrity. Everybody says, I have that smile, but she comes with you and it might be a dagger, but she's got that smile. And afterwards, you got to know when to step back. You can't throw everything on everybody at the same time. I put one thing down at the table and put another one. I'm going to come back and I said, you know, I have a question. Yes, it wouldn't be a meeting if you didn't have one. Okay. So, but you do it and I laugh it off as well, but I'm serious. And most people recognize that. I hope that helps.
Fabulous. The next question we have, 8 women are looking at you together in Kenya too, and want you to come here. We face situations where we want to be leaders, but it's so hard. What about the men? How do we handle them being like they don't want a woman for a wife who is strong?
Be you. It doesn't matter what they want. You can choose who you want to be with, but it doesn't matter. Generations are changing with men as well, as long as you do it with integrity. I look forward to coming to Kenya. I've flown into Kenya. They didn't let me get off and go into the city. Had a long layover and thought I could as I was coming from, I believe, Angola. And I think there's people here from Cameroon. But you just have to, push. And sometimes it's not always gently. So just move forward. It is hard. No one's going to give up power, give up authority. Those of us in the academy, women are still Black, white, Latino women, all groups of women from all over the world. We are all waiting for those opportunities that should be natural for us. The promotion still is, there's too many men that are leading in places that there could be women, but it depends on who sits at the table. We have to change policies, and you can't change the policies unless you're sitting at the table. So position yourself to get to the table somewhere. It might be at an NGO. It might be at yesterday, Her Excellency talked about getting involved in the community, in politics. Sit at the seat of somewhere. Okay, my daughters graduated from high school in 2003 and 2007. And I saw a woman who's running for judge. And she said to me, she said, weren't you a political officer in DeKalb County back in the mid 2000s? And I said, no, I've never ran for office. She said, I know your face and I know your voice. And I said, well, I was the PTA president at the high school. She said, what high school? And I told her, she said, my son was there for 2 years. That's where I know your voice from. So I was almost like, oh my God, is my voice that bad that you remember? She says, no, have you thought of running for office? I have people who have said to me, we will work your campaign. Tell us when you're running. But it's the voice. So be the voice of the voiceless. Be that voice for those who can't raise that voice, because you are at a table, not the one you may want to get to. But also, let me say to you real quickly, I told people who had power, men and women, that I wanted to be a president. I watched them name white males who didn't have the experience I had, but I continued to tell them. And then there was one presidency and I applied and they came and spoke to me and said, we don't think that's a good position and all of that. And I'm just like, wow. But what I did, because I applied, they knew I was serious. So when this opportunity came up, someone in the back room had to call my name. I didn't apply for it. You don't get an interim role. You're going to hear from a speaker from Liberia for public service. She's an interim. Somebody had to know her name. You have to be in position. They have to hear that you're able to decipher between the good and the bad, and you use good judgment, so that when that opportunity comes, somebody would say, Dr. Washington's interested, Dr. Beta is interested. I know that this person can do it. Plan positioning yourself for power, for opportunities, for that call. And when that call came, they needed me to say yes or no with 2 weeks notice, go and be the president. And I did. And then I got appointed and stayed 8 years. I did not apply for that position. Be in the right place at the right time so that you can move forward. Dr. Washington, do you have time for one more question?
We have one more question, but I'd just like to acknowledge a couple of people who are just saying thank you. They find you amazing. They're shouting out from J State, 60 of us watching from a breakfast meeting. We're so inspired by you.
Oh,
And
wow.
our final question for the morning: how can women show that they are competent and want to be leaders without being seen as bossy?
I'm bossy. There's nothing wrong with being bossy. Just do it with integrity. It's okay. When we think of the boss, we think of men. They don't care that they're seen as bossy. Who said we can't? My mother was bossy. My grandmother was bossy. She was a quiet boss. But when she spoke, my grandfather, I said, oh my gosh, she can speak to him and he listens. Okay? My grandmother lived to be 100. I have a 101-year-old aunt. I have a 92-year-old aunt. They're bossy in their own way, with respect. There's nothing wrong with being seen as being bossy. Take out those bad words. Take out those words that we think don't belong to women. We can stand with the power that we've been given. We've been gifted to be the head of the household, to nurture the children, to come back and be caregivers for the old and the elderly. Who would give that job to someone who is incompetent? And you have to be able to make the right decisions. When I first came to Togo and went to see the market women, and they called them the Benz mamas, and I said, why do you call them the Benz mamas? Because they run the marketplace and they drive Mercedes Benz. Bossy? Oh, those market women are bossy. I interviewed women entrepreneurs in Ghana, and I just realized there's nothing wrong with being your own boss and being bossy. So let me close with one of my closing words of wisdom to you. Wonderful women of color, daughters of warriors and kings. What a rich birthright they bring us. Oh, how their legacy sings. Sharing the pride of our people, teaching what's right and what's wrong, rising to meet every challenge, keeping our character strong. There is nothing you can't do. There is nowhere you can't go. I want you to know that you are our future leaders. You are the future bosses. You are the future of those who are going to make the decisions, not just for your family, for your household, for your school, for your agency, but for our countries, for our nation. We are that generation, and we must step into it. Step into those shoes that already are designed to fit you, and don't let anybody turn you around. Whose drumbeat? Whose drumbeat? Whose drumbeat? You. Do you walk to? Do you run to? Do you rise up in the morning to? Make sure that drumbeat, whether it starts with the creator and works its way to those ancestors that gave you the spine and body that you have and the intellect to go and do what you know needs to happen, walk in it. Walk in it gracefully. But there are times when you have to step in it, and there's times you have to run through it. Be ready for those changes, because we are the women that are here for the future. As Fannie Lou Hamer says, and you look up that phenomenal woman, never forget where we came from and always praise the bridge that carried you over. But she also said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. So you step in and you do something about it. It has been an honor to be one of the speakers for this phenomenal conference that brings women and girls together from all over the world, but particularly on the continent of Africa, my motherland. My paternal's roots, my grandfather's roots, according to African ancestry, are from Gabon. And I'm looking forward to come there and meet my people. I've claimed them in Ghana, I claimed them in Liberia, I claimed them in Togo and Benin and Ivory Coast and at Cameroon and Angola, but I'm looking forward to coming home, because I know what blood is inside my veins. Go in peace, Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.